single mom, deserted by her husband in a time when women were second-class citizens and weren't allowed to get a higher education, Williamina Paton Fleming rose from the humble position of a maid to one of the most famous astronomers in history. She supervised the cataloging of hundreds of thousands of stars, refined the star hunting method, and changed the face of astronomy forever. This is the story of an immigrant woman that beat her circumstances and the system by choosing science. Hello, curious cats, and welcome to another episode of Choosing Science. Today we'll be talking about a woman whose life is a great example of how wonderfully unexpected life can turn out sometimes. And what makes today's subject so special, even more so when compared to most of the people I talked on this podcast already, is that Williamina Paton Stevens, later Fleming, was not from a long line of intellectuals. Both her parents were more than respectable people, but her father was an artisan and her mother was a homemaker. They were both completely unacquainted with the sciences. Williamina's start in life as well could have never predicted that she would be one of the most acclaimed astronomers in history, with only a high school education under her belt. She was born on May 15th, 1857. Williamina, also known by her closest as Mina, saw the light of day in Dundee, Scotland. I couldn't notice that month of May was a very busy month for her, as she celebrated her birthday, got married, and died sometime in the second half of the month. I couldn't find much about her childhood or teenage years, only that she was one in 9 children. Her dad passed away when she was 7, and that she was remarked as very bright by her teachers. So bright and hard-working, in fact, that at 14, between 1871 and 1876, in order to support her mother and siblings, she took the position as a student teacher. After high school, as it was very common for lower-class women to do, and most likely to unburden her single mother, she got married in 1877 to a Dundee bank widower employee who was 16 years her senior, called James or Fleming. A year later, they emigrated to Boston, US in November 1878, where things did not start on the right foot. Soon after they arrived, she discovered she was pregnant. Her husband, for reasons that I have not found, decided that the best reaction to that event is to bounce and leave his pregnant wife in a foreign country to fend for herself. I couldn't even find if he had the decency to divorce her. So, sometimes in life, trash decides to take itself out. It also happens that sometimes the worst thing that happened turns into the greatest opportunity, which is hard to see at that moment, but this is exactly what happened to Williamina. And I'm saying that because due to her circumstances, she had to find a job to sustain herself as soon as possible. And so it happens that Edward Pickering, who was the director of the Harvard College Observatory, needed a maid. She was so grateful for this job that she named her son Edward Charles Pickering Fleming, which I didn't know you can put last names as first names, but hey, it was the 19th century when you get heroin over the counter, so I guess worse things can happen than that. Now, this job was probably what changed her trajectory forever. Not probably, it's most certainly. And yes, I made an astronomy pun. I couldn't help myself. And that was because Professor Pickering was trying to update the methods used at the observatory to make them more informative, quick, and reliable. He grew frustrated with the male assistants that worked under him, as they apparently made frequent mistakes. He grew so frustrated that, by many accounts, one day he exclaimed, "My Scottish maid could do better." And apparently he really meant it, because he did hire her as a computer for administrative tasks and calculations. Although he became a proponent for hiring women and encouraged other labs to do the same, I can't help but think, how bad were those guys? It's like that friend that just had their 10th horrible breakup and tells you that they are so fed up with dating that they're turning gay, and then they actually do it. I don't know, maybe I have weird friends. But that isn't to say that Mina was eventually hired on full position even after that by Pickering, because her male colleagues were not the best at their job, but also because he recognized her great potential. He opened jobs for women that were prior reserved only for males, and Mina became one of them, to take a male-dominated job. And after her, many more women were actually hired, fortunately. She opened up a door for everybody else. And one of the most important projects she was assigned to was celestial photography. It sounds very esoteric, but it actually isn't. This project was founded by the Draper Memorial. And this memorial fund, was named after Henry Draper, who was the first scientist to experiment with astronomical photographic plates in the whole world. And after Draper's death, his wife entrusted in Pickering the equipment as well as funding to continue the work. And now, science intermission, let's talk about what are these photographic plates. So what is interesting is that at that point in time, nobody knew what stars were made of. Only later in 1925, Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin proposed for the first time that the stars may be made mainly of hydrogen and helium. She figured this out also thanks to the photographs produced by Williamina and Pickering and their team. And that is because the principle of taking these photographic plates of individual stars is to put a prism in front of the telescope, which will divide the wavelengths that are in the white light. And these representations of stars basically resemble the rainbow when white light is passed through the prism. But instead of showing colors, it is in shades of gray, sort of like a barcode that is unique to each star. And why is this cool? Because instead of mapping the sky trying to make sure each star is in the correct place, which means you have to observe it at a very specific time and space, with these plates, it is like taking a picture that can be cataloged and analyzed anytime, and also gives you information on the physical attributes of the specific celestial body. I will give you an example of how that worked by reading an excerpt from a speech Williamina gave at the Congress of Astronomy and Astrophysics in Chicago in 1893. I quote, "Many interesting discoveries have been made from the study of these photographs of stellar spectra. First in importance among them was the discovery that Ursae Majoris is a close binary star, the two components revolving around each other at the velocity of about 100 miles a second in a period of about 52 days. This discovery was made by Professor Edward C. Pickering, his attention being first attracted to it by the fact that in the photographs of the spectrum of these stars, the lines appear sometimes double and at other times single. This discovery led to to the finding of a second object of this same class, B Aurigae, by Miss Antonia C. Mori. This last star has attracted public attention much more widely than Ursae Majoris, and may be considered more interesting in that the period of revolution of the two components is only 3 days, 23 hours, and 36.7 minutes. Ursae Majoris and Aurigae are such close double stars that they could not possibly be separated visually with the most powerful instruments at the present in use. A third object of this class is suspected to be Lyrae, which shows a similar change, or rather it shows a reversal in the position of the bright lines with regard to the dark lines in its photographic spectrum, that is, they apparently cross and recross each other. This is doubtless associated with the variation in the light of the stars, since the period is the same for both. The examination of the photographs of the brighter stars have been made by Miss Mori, who has also been engaged on their classification. The micrometric measurements of the lines in the photographic spectra of the bright stars have been made by Miss Florence Cashman. End quote. So, first of all, I had no idea there is such a thing as double or multiple stars. So for today's episode, the question is, so everybody learns more today, how many stars are single stars? Like our sun, for example. When I searched that information myself, I realized that my whole life is a lie, and that the people making Star Wars could have tried a bit harder with the Tatooine, suns, and instead of giving it 2 boring single stars, go with something bolder, like, 3, 4. So, I'm writing my letter of complaint as we speak, and you can do that too. So, go learn about it. Anyway, back to our subject. So, Mina became the head of the operation of examining the stars and classifying them, and examining with her team each fragile photographic glass plate in the collection, and also identifying the peculiarities of the stars, and also indexing them and storing the information was extremely tedious work. But slowly but surely she got to perform the intellectual side as well. And although her name was not present on the Draper catalog when they finished cataloging all the spectra they found, she did left her mark through the new classification method she and Pickering established. One of her underlings, Annie Jump Cannon, who later refined and improved the system, remarked that, I quote, "With a naturally clear and brilliant mind, Mrs. Fleming at once evinced special aptitude for this photographic investigation, which was so novel that precedents could not be found for its execution." End quote. In the 1890 Draper Catalogue of Stellar Spectra, more than 10,000 stars were described according to the new Pickering-Fleming system, establishing a new foundation for astronomical classification. And I have to give kudos to Pickering on this, because unlike other male researchers at the time, he did give credit to Williamina after 1890 on all the work they published. Although in the October 1891 issue of Observatory, a reviewer wrote, and I quote, "The name of Mrs. Fleming is already well known to the world as that of a brilliant discoverer, but the present volume shows that she can do real hard work as well." End quote. This has the vibe of someone telling you that you are smart for a woman, or when a toxic relative tells you that your haircut makes your nose look smaller. It really makes you feel appreciated. Anyway, those were the times, I guess. But on the bright side, I know, another astronomy pun, thank you very much, I'm on a roll today. She did get the recognition she deserved while alive, which for many people is actually an accomplishment. And looking back in history, yeah, you can see that all the time, not happening, unfortunately. And during a Harvard conference in 1898, Fleming's paper titled Stars of the Fifth Type in the Magellanic Clouds was presented by Pickering. The paper focused on stars with distinct bright line spectra and was presented to an audience predominantly composed of men. Shocking, I know. Although Fleming had not initially credited herself for the discovery of these stars, Pickering believed that her accomplishments deserved recognition. As a result, a spontaneous outburst of applause compelled Fleming to step forward and address the questions generated by her paper. It was during this conference that she was acknowledged as a co-founder of the Astronomical and Astrophysical Society. So you think classifying more than 10,000 stars is a performance? Granted, she didn't do it only by herself, but she supervised and checked each classification. First of all, by the time she reached retirement, it was more like 200,000 stars. Second of all, that is not her proudest accomplishment. In 1907, in the Annals of Harvard College Observatory, Fleming released a publication titled A Photographic Study of Variable Stars. This study encompassed 222 celestial bodies that she had personally discovered, with each star meticulously measured for its position and magnitudes of comparison. By providing this valuable data, Fleming's study served as a crucial reference for astronomers in the future, aiding in the understanding and placement of these stars within the universe. I hope that it will make 222 episodes of this podcast, let alone discover 222 things of anything. And this feeling is actually shared by the British astronomer H. Turner, who said, and I quote, "Many astronomers are deservedly proud to have discovered one variable and content to leave the arrangements for its observation to others. The discovery of 222 and the care of their future on this scale is an achievement bordering on the marvelous." End quote. She also successfully employed photography, being the first astronomer to do so in capturing images of 9 gaseous planetary nebulae. Additionally, she identified and documented 10 novae, representing the majority of newly discovered stars throughout her career. And not only that, but in 1910, she also discovered the famous, or infamous, I don't know, extremely high-density stars known as white dwarfs. These people shamelessly discover everything and leave the rest of us to fight for the scraps. Very unfair. Or that's what I like to tell myself when I go to sleep at night. And what is even crazier, I'm not done, is that her organizational duties actually interfered with her scientific investigations to the point when she wrote in her personal journal that she found it very trying that her mentor preferred that she prepare the work of others for publication instead of her own. So she complained that due to inadequate communication among certain staff members, Fleming was compelled to spend valuable time revising work instead of devoting it to her research endeavors. And this last part really stuck with me because it's been more than 100 years and this is still a gigantic issue. You'd think that at this point we'll have more sophisticated issues, but 2023, we still struggle with communication sometimes, so yeah. I guess some things never change. But even with that, she discovered so much, and she did so much on top of everything, which is, I don't know. I don't know how she did it. But unfortunately, despite her great achievements and very progressive attitude of Pickering for that time, Mina and her female co-workers faced major inequalities. Advancements in the observatory were extremely rare for women, with Mina occupying one of the most important ones. And compensation was deplorable. Reading her diary entry, I have flashbacks with many conversations I had with my colleagues in academia. Only difference is that back then it was a solely gendered issue. She wrote, I quote, "He seems to think that no work is too much or too hard for me, no matter what the responsibility or how long the hours. Sometimes I feel tempted to give up and let him try someone else or some of the men to do my work in order to have him find out what he's getting for $1,500 a year from me, compared to $2,500 from some of the other assistants. Does he ever think that I have a home to keep and a family to take care of as well as the man? But I suppose a woman has no claim to such comforts." End quote. You know how they say, no good deed goes unpunished. She was mainly pressured by the fact that she wanted to pay her son's tuition at MIT and felt that she was on the verge of breaking down. As much as some scientific supervisors consider that breathing the air around them is enough to sustain one's life, I hope that it takes less than 100 years to fix this issue in academia. Who says I'm bitter? I'm not bitter about it, nobody is. But yeah, this issue is still felt very much in academia. Nowadays it's not gendered anymore. Everybody suffers equally, which it doesn't make it better. But who knows, maybe in another 100 years we will be paid humanely. Maybe someone will make a podcast episode about it. That would be funny. Anyway, at the end, besides expressing gratefulness that she stuck to her guns and left such amazing legacy and inspiration, I would also want to talk about her as a person. I gave you a glimpse in how she felt that yes, she did a lot of great things, but as a human being, sometimes you have your moments when you want to give up, break down. But as you already know, this podcast is about perseverance, humanity, and success, and she had plenty of all of it. So let me tell you some personal things about her. In 1906, she was the first American elected a member of the British Royal Astronomical Society and was starred in the first edition of American Men of Science. Yes, I made another pun. And no, the irony did not escape me of being starred in American Men of Science. Good thing she wasn't the first human that appeared in the first edition of American Dogs or something like that. I guess you can find a win in everything. But she was there, which is still something. She was an avid supporter of women in science and did her best to enable more to occupy positions in the observatory. According to historian Owen Gingerich, I quote, "Mrs. Fleming's keen eyesight, remarkable memory, and industrious nature enabled her to advance to a position of considerable authority at the observatory." End quote. One of her colleagues, Dorrit Hoffleit, described her as a sparkling and friendly though she was. Her reputation as a strict disciplinarian lived after her, and as late as 1930s, elderly ladies who had worked with her in their youth still regarded her with awe. End quote. Fleming possessed a generous and compassionate character, easily forming friendships with others. In her leisure time, she took pleasure in activities such as cooking and needlework. Yes, she had some free time, somehow, I don't know how. As a thoughtful gesture, she would sew dolls dressed in traditional Scottish Highland attire for her colleagues. Although, based on her great achievements, one would think that she had 30 hours a day or invented time travel, and I don't know, maybe made a pact with the devil to live to 150. But the truth is that Mina's life burned very bright and quick, and unfortunately she died at 54 of pneumonia. Annie Jump Cannon, appointed by Pickering as Fleming's successor, as the Harvard Observatory curator of astronomical photographs, recalled Williamina Fleming as, I quote, possessed of an extremely magnetic personality and an attractive countenance, enlivened by remarkably bright eyes. Her bright face, her attractive manner, and her cheery greeting with its charming Scotch accent will long be remembered. And for the end, I will read the end of her speech in 1893 that I think encapsulates her legacy of perseverance, humanity, and success in the face of an unfavorable world and faith, and also in a very unfair system. I quote, "In conclusion, while I may be thought to have strayed far afield from the subject on which I was supposed to address you here, the investigations and researches described above are those in which the women in this department are engaged, in which they are thoroughly interested, and in which they are becoming trained and competent assistants. While we cannot maintain that in everything woman is man's equal, yet in many things her patience, perseverance, and method make her his superior. Therefore, let us hope that in astronomy, which now affords a large field for woman's work and skill, she may, as has been the case in several other sciences, at least prove herself his equal." End quote. So, living with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're interested in other subjects, listen to the other episodes as well. It'll be very, hopefully, interesting thing for you. If you have any suggestions of people you'd like to hear about, send me an email. You can also use Twitter or whatever you want. Well, whatever is easy for you, and I guess see you next time. Bye.